we're back. It's Beyond the Pew.
We're back at it again, faithfully back.
We are here, Pastor Eric Gill.
Pastor Bruce Rosa.
And we have been having a great time.
It has been
this season has been good.
Fantastic season.
Yes, we've had a number of guests on with us, and we have another guest joining us.
Just because we couldn't have enough special guests.
We have more.
One
special
more.
guests.
Yes.
Yes.
With an S at the end.
And so we're pleased to have Adam Littlefield with us today.
Hello.
Adam Littlefield. Adam, we're glad you're here.
We are very glad.
Glad to be here.
You are a vital part of Beyond the Pew.
Beyond the Pew.
Maybe not on this side of the camera, but you have been a part of all of the Beyond the Pew episodes.
From day one.
From day one.
You are one of the founding fathers of Beyond the Pew.
Wow. Founding father. Yeah. How does it make you feel?
It's been a fun ride.
Yes,
it has been a fun ride. You have been through a lot when it comes to Beyond the Pew.
It's true.
You saw our highs, you saw our lows. You saw when Bruce fell asleep, and you saw when I mispronounced words. So you've been through all.
It's true.
Adam, for those that do not know you, that maybe are listening, tell us about your role here at Maranatha and how long you've been here.
Sure. I'm the production director here at Maranatha, so that means I oversee all of the audio and lighting elements, as well as working with Miles to oversee video. Mm-hmm. I've been here for 5 years now.
Wow.
So it's been great.
It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Time flies.
You and I got hired pretty closely together.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Pretty much. Same spring,
Same spring,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you had mentioned about production, and a lot of times maybe in the minds of church people in particular, when they think about church and services and they think of production, it puts a red flag up in their mind.
Yeah.
Sure.
A lot of times people have a misconception that, production or, having things produced brings with it a sense of entertainment rather than worship or rather than, giving worship to God. So what would you respond with as far as why production is essential and necessary, but it's not so that we can present to people a concert or present to them a production feel? How would you balance that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our mission statement as the production department at Maranatha is to eliminate distractions and to create environments that draw attention to God and others and away from self.
Wow, that's great.
I love that.
Yeah, can you say that again?
Yeah,
that was
so
great.
eliminate distractions, which is a huge component.
Yes.
And create environments for worship that draw attention to God and others and away from self.
That's good.
Yes, I love that. I mean, distractions like like bad like noise, the lights, all which
Yeah. So really, at its heart, production is just allowing the message of whoever is leading worship, preaching, praying before the congregation to go forth. So at its most basic level, people need to be heard. We need to have lights so people can be seen. And, we have our live stream so that people can, tune in online if they're not able to be with us in person. So that is the necessity of the video component. Yeah. So at its most basic level, that's why production exists. Wow. And it may, to some people, bring connotations to concerts or kind of more secular entertainment arenas. Where that comes from is we're using the same technologies that they're using. So it's almost along the same lines. If you're building a church building, we don't have like a separate set of like Christian building materials that we use for churches. We're using technologies and we're using the same techniques that they use.
Sure.
But we're using them for a redeemed purpose to put forth the gospel.
That's clear. I think that's a very good way to put it. And I think the same thing could be said, like, air conditioning units. Like we don't have specialty Christian air conditioning units.
Yeah,
right?
we're all working with the same stuff.
Units. We're working with the same things.
Well, we are thankful we have
yes.
it.
And so I would say just one of the things that people oftentimes don't think, like it talks about, there's a saying, the squeaky wheel gets the fix, right? The non-squeaky wheel is not getting attention, right? And so people notice when something doesn't go right.
Right.
And most of the time people will voice an opinion. When something's not going right or they see something that's off, people are quick to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
But what we don't realize, and I think this is where you and you mentioned Miles, you guys play a vital role in this when it comes to the production side of things. Things are going so well most of the time. People don't think about the fact that the reason, the instruments are in sync and the reason you're not getting feedback, which can be piercing to your ears, or the reason you're not hearing one instrument dominating the other. The reason you can hear the pastor on Sunday morning when he's preaching is because you're doing what you're doing, and you're making sure those things are efficient and running efficiently. And so it's a huge part of any church ministry, especially a ministry that's reaching many people. And then we could get even into the whole live stream thing as far as what that's doing, So, but we appreciate what you're doing. I think your explanation of that, the production side, is very good.
And I think too, we are to do everything in order, and for us as a church to be able to do things with order and with excellence, it requires individuals like you, Miles, and others that are part of your team. Which allows us to. It's kind of like a vehicle that is running smooth. Like if your car is working well, you ain't thinking you're just going from one point A to point B. Which on Sundays, the message to your point being communicated to the members or to whoever's in attendance. But the moment that car is not working, that message can get distortion. And I am very thankful for what you guys do, because I will say, as a church, that message is not being distortion by things that are not working the way that they're supposed to work.
I think that's why in a lot of cases people have a hard time wrapping their mind around production in the context of a church, because by its very goal, if we're doing production well, it won't be noticeable.
For sure. Which is a unique goal.
Right, it is.
In comparison with other things that you want to be seen. Ideally, people are not even talking about it because it's just running and going, right? So what would you say gives you the most joy and fulfillment in your role?
I think I really appreciate how my role allows me to use technology and creativity for the sake of the gospel. There's so many fields where you can kind of anywhere you work, you can be a witness and put your faith to good use. But I'm always blessed that there is such a easy way to put those skills and those areas into use directly to amplify the gospel, sometimes quite literally.
And that's a good challenge, I think, for everybody listening too, right? Is that whatever skill set God's given to you or abilities God's given to you, there is a way to utilize that for the furtherance of the gospel and for the ministry of the gospel. And so God's allowing you to use your gifts, talents, abilities for that purpose. So we talked a little bit about the production side of things. Let's talk a little bit about sound, right? Because people in the church, I'm not just talking about Maranatha when I say the church. I'm talking about the church in general. You have a lot of opinions, and this has been this way for as long as probably churches existed. About sound levels, right? As far as what's too loud and what's too soft. So, how do we set our levels? Because I'm sure you've heard critiques of people saying that's too loud, or I can't hear that. So, is that a random thing? Do we have a standard we go by, just for people listening that maybe are curious, why does it seem so loud or not loud enough sometimes? What's our standard?
So as far as on how we ended up at where the levels that we run at, we have to a little bit be dictated by the genre of the music that we are using for worship. And a lot of that music is in a little bit more of kind of a more like pop rock kind of context. Just be piercing and just extremely unpleasant. So we are trying to represent the genre well, while also kind of taking an average and landing somewhere in the middle that is not going to be loud enough to offend, but also not be so quiet that we're losing all of the power of the music.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as how we make that happen on a weekly basis, every Sunday we've got a decibel meter out, and we have all of our volunteers adhering to a specific range. So we are maxing out at 88 dB A-weighted. So that's the max that we hit at the mix position. So it's not something kind of random, like, yeah, we think this sounds good. We're looking at meters every week as we're putting mixes together.
Yeah.
And also, this is kind of a side trail from that question, but I think a lot of times when people are talking about volume, they're concerned about hearing health. They're wondering, this is maybe louder than I'm used to listening to music. Is this dangerous for my hearing? So I want to kind of reassure people that the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health has published a list of volume levels in like a workplace context. So people who are working in a factory or another loud environment, how much of this exposure they can get on a daily basis. And so where we peak at 88 dB, it's safe as determined by this, group to have 4 hours of exposure to that a day.
Wow.
Day in, day out. So we're well under, any kind of a threat to hearing.
Yeah.
So on the safety side, that's kind of, that side of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I think like based on what you're saying, here's the thing that I think is so interesting, because you do hear a lot of people, you can come across people that will complain about volume and have suggestion. And I think it's because partially we think of volume being like you driving in your car and you just keep grabbing like a knob or something and just turning it down. Like we think it's just that simple.
Sure.
Like it's just one thing of you like hitting a button and bringing it down. But from what you're saying, dealing with volume is a science. Like it requires a very precise understanding, a very precise ability to be able to discern the genre and to be able to discern all those different things. And so it's not that simple. So when someone comes to you and says, hey, can you lower the volume because it may be too loud, it's not as easy as just pulling something out. Like there's a science behind that.
Right. And not to mention, it's very dependent on the frequency of the sound that you're hearing. So, if you've got like a piercing high frequency, it'll become uncomfortable at a very low volume. But a mix that's done properly to to get rid of those piercing frequencies, you can run it higher and not have it be unpleasant.
Sure.
And the same thing for a lot of low frequencies. You can have a mix that's metering at a certain level, and most of that is low frequency, and you're just getting rumbled to death.
Yeah.
Versus at the same level and it's balanced, so that it's not just kind of a one-to-one, like, well, it's at this level. There's a lot that kind of goes into what a mix looks like, even at a set level.
So our dB level would be 88. That's like our peak where we're at. What about the person who says, well, I have a meter on my phone and I put it out on my pew on Sunday morning and it's reading a 98.
Yeah.
And you said it's at 88. Why the discrepancy?
So there are a lot of apps out there that are useful tools that have an audio meter, but when it comes down to it, the microphones in phones aren't calibrated to make those kind of fine readings. And a lot of the apps that you'll download will even say like, hey, this is for reference purposes, but it's not intended to be a true measurement.
Sure.
So they're, phones just aren't capable of what a specialized device that's intended for that.
Which in most areas, we understand that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this issue of sound, a lot of times people will be like, no, my phone told me.
And it can
this is what it was.
It can be a little misleading because on the screen of your phone, it's like, hey, it says right there, it's this volume.
Yes.
Yes. But what you're not taking into account is like, well, as best the phone can tell.
Sure.
But,
the phone was not designed to read. Like it's not the intended design of the phone. It can help you figuring it out. Just like the phone right now can help you. Like if you have an iPhone, it can help you measure a room. Yeah, but the phone is not a measuring tape. Like you have a measuring tape for a reason, right?
Yep.
Like same thing with volume.
Yeah. And it can be a useful thing. It'll be consistent with itself, so you can tell if something is louder or quieter than it has been in the past. So that would probably be one useful thing to use a phone dB meter for. But yeah, in terms of overall volume, they're not going to be the most accurate.
Yeah.
And Adam, how often would you say in our church do we change the volume? Or the dB, I guess.
So in terms of like changing the overall level we're shooting for, we're generally pretty consistent. We've adjusted it maybe once since I've been here. So we really
5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when someone says it's louder than it is accurately not true because you only adjusted it one time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And that being said, it is an average. So music is inherently dynamic, and it's supposed to be. So, there will be moments, and bigger songs that are closer to the top of that, 88 dB limit, and then some that are running lower. So, and even, the way that a song is arranged can kind of change our perception of its loudness. So if, you've got a song with a lot of drums and electric guitars, it can come across as like, whoa, that's loud. Where even though in actuality, it's at the same level. So a lot of it is just kind of a mental perception of it too. So there's that aspect.
Wow.
Well, this is good. I mean, this is helpful because one, you're talking about things I have no idea as far as how to arrive at those. And since I don't know and you do, you should be the one doing it.
Yeah.
But I would say that would be equally true for most people.
I don't even know what dB is. Like you've been saying dB for the last 2 minutes or however long, and I'm like dB, like database,
decibel.
Yeah, decibels. Yeah,
still like I don't even.
Yeah,
standard measurement.
I mean, just for people listening, though, there is a method to our madness, if you will, when it comes to what the sound levels are set at, what the dBs are going to be running at, how we are trying to run services. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and preparation and testing that goes into it, and so it's not a random thing. And to what Eric brought up earlier, when someone comes up to the sound booth and they're like, "Turn the sound down." Like, we get it. Like, some people have, more sensitive ears, and some people, and so they're doing it from a place of like, hey, I genuinely believe that's too loud, but it isn't a knob that we just say, okay, we'll just forget everything that we've already prepared and just push a button to turn it down.
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
not,
Mark.
That's not how
like,
that works.
I apologize, Mark. I'm gonna lower it. Right, like it just don't happen like that.
Right.
And I think I think it's fair for our audience to remember, at least out here in Maranatha, you guys put an extra effort to make sure that this right. Like you are constantly during trial week, you're constantly in the room mixing, but also like you do a rehearsal on once a week, or midweek rehearsal. But then also on Sunday mornings prior to starting, you do another rehearsal where you're like constantly checking, making sure that it is what it needs to be. Because to your point, you want to be excellent in how you run that ministry, because you don't want it to create any distraction from the message.
Yeah, and that's a big part of my role as well, because we have a lot of volunteers on our team that will be running sound. So a big part of my role on Sunday mornings is to walk around the room, make sure it doesn't just sound good at front of house back where we're mixing, but it sounds good for everybody, and to just keep that consistency so that, you're not looking back in the booth going like, oh, I can tell so-and-so is mixing this week because it sounds like this. We want to keep that consistency from week to week as well.
Yeah. No, we appreciate that. That's good. Adam, what do you wish people in the church knew that maybe they do not know about our services and production team?
Yeah, so I think a big misconception that a lot of people have is they just underestimate the amount of thought and planning that goes in, and just that we have a reason for everything we're doing. Even like one example we'll use for some special events, we'll use haze in the room, so it's kind of like a fog that you can see in the air. And a lot of people will ask like, what, do you just do that to make it look like a concert? Why do you do that? But the reason behind that is most of the time, if you're in a regular room without haze, you can only see a light if it's facing at you or it's hitting an object. And when you have haze in the room, that allows you to treat the light as a something in 3D space that you can see the beam of light itself.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times when people have issues with something that we're doing in production, a big part of it is just explaining, hey, we're doing this for a reason. It's not just because we think it's cool or because we want it to be like a concert. We're doing it for this reason. We've thought it through. It's part of this plan. And this is how we're using it to enhance what we're doing, enhance our times of worship, our times of preaching. And I think the second thing that, people may not realize, and it's important to know, is that we are a volunteer team on Sundays. We have 2 production staff members, and we'll have 8 positions in the production team each Sunday. So especially, if people are coming forward and are, critical of what something is happening, be aware that, you're being critical of your fellow church members and their work.
Yeah.
So
like they're serving.
their service. So, I think it's just important to know, like, this is not a like, hey, we have this team, we're doing this, and then you're going to watch. This is us. We're working together. People that you're in connect groups with are, all serving, on this team together.
Yeah. I think those are 2 fantastic points, right?
Yeah.
One, that people would understand the planning and the expertise, of those that are in charge, but also, the thought that has gone into what they see on any given Sunday or special service. There is a plan, there's a purpose, there's a reason, and it is never our intention. I know this is your heart as well by the statement you made about the production team's mission statement. It is never our intention to say, you know what, we want to purposely offend people as much as possible with this.
Yeah.
It's never our intention to think, hey, I hope that if there's people here with sensitive ears that they can't even sit in here.
Yeah.
Like, it's never our intention for any of that. Our
Right.
intention, right, is to give glory to the Lord. It's to be able to put the focus on Him. And there's a lot of intentionality in that. And so I think it's good for people to understand that. I think your point that we have a volunteer team. And in addition to the 2 production staff we have, it's volunteers that are running sound, that are running the lights, that are running cameras, that are helping and troubleshooting and doing things when you're not the troubleshooter. It's volunteers that are helping with those things. And so I think it's important for people to understand, like, we're asking people in our church to give of their time and their talents, their desire here, and they equally want to follow that mission statement. They want this to be about the Lord and for His work. And so it can be easy, and myself included, to be critical of things when we think we see something we don't like.
Sure.
And that's in every area. That's about the messages. People shoot me an email or write me a text or come and talk to me or give me a note if I say something in the message they disagreed with or they didn't like, or if they thought I should have said something a different way.
Sure.
I hear that. People are critical. We talked about it with, Sean, when Sean was on here as our worship pastor, and about people's opinions and critiques about, the singing and the music specifically. You get the same kind of critiques about, all different areas. But sound levels, volume, lighting, that seems to be just a bullseye target a lot of times for people. And a lot of times it's people don't know how to communicate what they're truly hearing. But that's where we're asking folks, hey, trust us, right? We're putting the time, we're doing this. There's not a randomness to this. There's specific things we're seeking to do. And like you said, it's your fellow church members that are serving and doing this as well. Those are great reminders, I think, for it. It's a good segue as well to a question of, are there current needs in our area or in your area of ministry that people can serve in? So do we have needs in this area? And then also, how do they get started to serve there? Is there training available if they want to serve there?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that even ever since I've been here, we're at the kind of the highest enrollment in the production team that I've had, and it's a huge blessing to be able to be staffed like that. But we still have needs. There are still plenty of places where people can serve. One of the most common ways that I'll kind of bring people into the production team is as a camera operator, because we need 4 of those per Sunday to make our live stream happen. And in trying to not have people serve more than once or twice a month, that's a lot of positions.
What would that entail as far as to serve as a camera operator?
So it's just a Sunday morning commitment. We have a rehearsal before the service, and then we live stream the first service, and then you're free to go as soon as that first service is over.
So it's exclusively Sunday morning.
Yes, and it's not a terribly huge chunk of time, so it's a great way to serve on a Sunday morning, but not, still have the ability to, be in an ABF if you're in an ABF, or, have a service that you just attend with your family.
But Adam, what if there's somebody in our church that has seen, maybe those individuals that are working or in the live stream or controlling those cameras, and they're like, that's something that I would like, but I just don't know how to handle those big cameras. Like I can record something on a smaller camera, or maybe it seems like it's something that I could do, but it's just, I don't know how to do it. Like, will you still accept those volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not somewhere that has a lot of people that come in with, industry skills. So really 90% of the volunteers on our team, they've started from scratch. So if you don't have experience doing production and you've never, volunteered at a church doing production before, that's totally fine. It's not going to throw us. We're happy to, train you up and, get you going.
And what I think I've enjoyed seeing is like you do have a diverse demographic of who are manning those cameras. Like it's not like just the young people. Like I've seen you have like high school students, college students, single young adults, beyond their late mid-30s, and even upper 40s. Like you have a variety of individuals that
absolutely
that it's not unique to an age.
Yeah, it's a great place to serve, especially it can be a great place to serve if you were kind of more introverted in nature and you want, a way to serve that is less interaction forward. It's, a super needed thing in our church that allows you to serve in that way, even if you don't have giftings that, you might not want to like teach a class or lead an ABF or something like that.
So on the more specified skill set, as far as running sound, for example, if someone says, hey, I have experience running sound or I have experience in training, we would use them, right, as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we would welcome that and say, hey, bring your experience and bring your training. What about the person with sound that doesn't have that? Can they be trained to learn that? And are you doing that right now?
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit of a longer process just because there is a lot that goes into it. But yeah, I've got someone who in a couple weeks, it'll be their first time running sound. We've done, a lot of training together and it's finally time to, let them do it on their own.
Great.
So yeah, it's something we're doing on an ongoing basis. And, it's always exciting to see somebody go from, 0 to 100 as far as, their ability to mix.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great.
And now that, and another thing that we're trying to kind of up our game when it comes to social media presence too, is there a need too for like people on a given Sunday just walking around taking pictures, or even maybe getting some footage of video recording? Like, is that an area of need that you will say that will fall under your area of production, or would that be something that like will fall with Miles specifically?
Yeah, so that would be something that Miles, kind of heads up that area, but so this is something that we are still in a little bit of the earlier stages of having an organized presence as far as a photo team and social media. But this is, it's somewhere we're really excited about growing as a church and allowing people that avenue of, being involved in video and areas beyond the live stream. So that's something, if that sounds interesting to people, by all means, approach me, approach Miles, and we're still in the early stages, but that's something we're pushing towards.
That's pretty cool. And would you say it's a similar scenario where like, I've never taken a picture beyond my phone? Will you still take me in if will you still train those individuals to how to use a camera? Yeah.
I mean, as long as you have the eye for it and, the aptitude, it's really more of an aptitude thing than an experience thing.
Oh,
so
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been helpful. I feel like kind of circling back to some of the earlier things you said, because part of the podcast, point of view is how do we live outside the church, right? Outside of Sunday morning worship, and what does it look like during our week? And I think you brought some great points. And one of the things that I'm hammering back on that I already talked about earlier is your statement of, hey, I want to use the gifts and abilities and talents God's given me to further the gospel, right? And we want to see that happen inside the church. We also would encourage people to be doing that outside the church, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is, again, one way within the church that we see this happening, but a great challenge, again, for anybody listening. Whatever God has given you abilities and giftedness in, talents in, how does he want you to utilize that for the sake of the gospel and for the glory of Christ, and then start doing it, right?
Yeah.
And God can use it in great ways. Adam, as we come to a close, we ask a question. You're behind the scenes, so
from day one, founding
episode. You have the
Beyond the Pew.
You have the the earphones in, like you're listening.
Put in the hours.
Yeah.
So,
but he also listens to it extra too, because he has to go through the audio and clean it.
We
and
hope,
everything.
Adam, that you know how we end every podcast. What's the question
we're on
that
a
we want to
streak right
ask
now.
all around the world, the question that we're asking people is what?
What does your life look like beyond the pew?
Amen.
Wow.
Amen. And we do hope that it honors the Lord Jesus. We'll see you next week.
To him.
Come on back.
We'll see you.